My husband, Ted, is unavoidable to be hospitalized due to a sudden illness. During this difficult time, our beloved granddaughter, Sophie, approached Ted with a gentle smile, slowly walking towards him. She then took out something special from a colorful small bag she was carrying.
Grandpa, I really hope you get well soon.
Sophie.
What she revealed was a lovingly folded origami crane. After receiving it, he examined the paper crane with a mixture of surprise and careful attention. Then, as if he had understood some deep meaning, he suddenly and violently tore it apart. "What are you doing? Don't disregard Sophie's deep love like this." Yet, his eyes held a coldness.
Don't you understand what this means?
"What?" Prompted by Ted, I also took a closer look at the torn crane. Upon closer inspection, I realized it contained a warm message hoping for his quick recovery and suggesting going shopping again soon. This is. The moment I saw the message, I felt warmth in my heart and was reminded of a recent event.
Actually, I'm not very good at origami.
There was no mistaking that Sophie had said this. With that single statement, the warm atmosphere among the family shifted dramatically, enveloping us in an indescribably cold and heavy air, leaving us all speechless. Well, for tonight's dinner, I'm thinking of making a heartwarming pizza and a flavorful seafood.
Ah, that sounds delightful. It'll make the wine even more enjoyable.
Please, moderate your drinking. Health comes first. Our daily life continued with these modest yet heartwarming exchanges between my husband and me. My husband, Ted, and I, Mary, have been married for 35 years, and thanks to the construction company Ted runs, our life has been stable and smooth sailing.
Dad, I actually got a special bottle of wine from a business partner today. Let's enjoy it tonight and have a relaxing time. Nathan, this is wonderful. Let's enjoy it right away.
Now, Nathan, don't spoil your father too much.
Don't worry. I know the limit.
Nathan, who had been fascinated by the buildings his father designed since his childhood, pursued a career as an architect with zeal, eventually obtaining his dream of becoming a first-class architect. Not only for his academic achievements, but also for being well-liked character, he is loved by many people since his student days.
You have always had a talent for capturing people's hearts. Anyone could do this.
Watching Nathan scratch his cheek shyly, I smiled at the charming scene. Then, I noticed a new message notification on my mobile phone. It was from our eldest son, Daniel, saying he couldn't take a long weekend off and would be unable to come home for a while. As usual, he must be busy. Daniel pursued a career as a chiropractor, studying for 4 years at university to earn his qualification before starting independent life. During the period I didn't live with Nathan, Daniel would always come back home whenever he had a long vacation.
Mom, I've missed your cooking so much, so I had to come back.
He says like this every time he comes home, and seeing Daniel enjoy the meals I have prepared has become a joy for me. In this way, we had built a good family relationship, but 3 years after he left home, one spring brought a new change to our household. It happened one day when I was serving him a meal full of love, just like I always do when he returns home.
Today's meal was delicious, thank you.
Usually, he would go for refills many times, but that day, he finished his meal without asking for more, which was unusual. "Oh. You usually eat much more, are you feeling all right?" After hesitating for a bit, he answered my concerned question.
Actually, I've been thinking a lot about a woman I met at a mixer recently. I can't sleep at night because she's all what I think about. Looks like you have finally found your spring.
Hearing this, Ted was very pleased and reacted joyfully to his son's romantic developments.
She's really wonderful, and she was popular among all the men at the venue. So, I feel like I have to step up my game. Daniel, you'll do great. No worries.
Ted gently patted Daniel on his back and encouraged his love strongly.
Thank you, really.
Encouraged by Ted, Daniel started dating Grace within a month after returning from his home visiting. Their relationship developed smoothly, and they decided to get married after a year.
The wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event, so I want to make it as grand as possible.
While planning the wedding, Daniel sought my advice over the phone. What kind of ceremony do you want to have?
Grace wants to have the ceremony in Guam, but
Guam, really? I couldn't hide my surprise at his unexpected answer and responded loudly.
when I said I'm not good with flights, she got quite upset and insisted on having it at the biggest venue in New York instead.
Well, we'll need to discuss this with your father as well. I brought up the wedding plans to Ted.
If it's a renowned venue in New York, I'm all for it. The new life ahead will bring various expenses, so I'll contribute to the cost of the venue.
And so, their wedding was set to be a grand affair. When I met Grace for the first time just before the wedding, she was even more beautiful than I had imagined, and her ceaseless smile was particularly memorable.
Nice to meet you. I am deeply grateful for your support with the wedding expenses.
Seeing the two of you happily makes me very glad as well.
Please continue to support Daniel.
Yes.
Seeing her, I was confident that I could build a good relationship with her in the future. After the successful wedding, they built their new house about 2 hours away from where we live and started their married life. At first, Daniel indicated he would come home for extended weekends, just like before.
Actually, Grace wants us to spend the long weekend just by ourselves, taking it easy.
When we received that message, we understood their desire to enrich their newlywed life together. Around that time, Nathan had earned his architect certification, ended his long stay abroad, and returned to live with the family as one of its members again. A year later, Daniel and his wife were blessed with a baby girl, and they had their first visit to our house to share their joy.
She really looks just like Grace, adorable.
With smiles all around, Daniel and Grace proudly introduced us to their beloved daughter, Sophie.
We've been getting busier with work recently. It really feels reassuring to have you, Mom and Dad, nearby.
We're always here to support you, so don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. Daniel nodded deeply, showing his agreement with our sentiment.
I really appreciate it. Actually, I'm a bit of a germaphobe and feel uncomfortable spending long hours at someone else's house, so it's hard for me to visit.
That must be tough. But we'd love it if you could drop by our place now and then. Of course, only when you feel up to it.
I'm truly grateful.
Afterward, she never visited our home, but the phone calls from Daniel increased.
Mom, I need some help.
Hearing Daniel's voice asking for help, I always responded warmly. I never interfered with the minutiae of parenting but understood the couple's busyness and cherished the time spent with our granddaughter, Sophie. Time flies, and Sophie was in the 3rd grade, trusting us wholeheartedly. One day, we took Sophie to the shopping mall instead of her busy parents. Inside the vast mall, Sophie's eyes sparkled with interest at various items.
Grandpa, what's that?
Pointing at a lady selling balloons with a big smile, Sophie asked with a face full of curiosity.
That's called a balloon. It gets filled with air and puffs up.
A balloon? That's interesting.
This balloon has lots of air inside, and if you let go, it floats up into the sky.
While talking, he carefully picked out a balloon and made sure Sophie could hold it tightly in her hand.
Wow. It's so light. Amazing.
Watching Sophie jumping for joy, Ted also smiled gently.
See, isn't it fun?
Grandpa, thank you so much.
A few days after treating Sophie to various items she liked and seeing her off happily, we received another call from Daniel.
Looks like I'll be home late again tonight.
To Daniel's guilty report, I assured him I didn't mind at all and that I had found many places where Sophie could enjoy herself to the fullest.
There are wide parks around here where Sophie can play to your heart's content.
When we took Sophie to the park, Nathan spread his arms wide as if to show off the vast space.
Yay!
I want to go on the swing.
Sounds good. Let's see who can swing the fastest.
Nathan showed deep affection towards Sophie, playing with her as if she were his own child. For Sophie, who enjoyed active play, time in the park must have been the ultimate entertainment. One day, while spending time closely with Sophie, Ted unexpectedly fell ill. Ted's struggle with a persistent cough from the morning caught my eye. "What's wrong? Are you okay?"
Ah, it must be the dry air, I suppose.
Ted tried to brush it off saying I'm fine, but despite drinking water and sucking on throat lozenges, there was no sign of the cough subsiding.
Dad, let's go to the hospital. You should get checked out by a doctor. I hate to worry you, but I'll be all right.
Despite his attempts to downplay it, Ted's cough worsened, leading to a severe coughing fit where he collapsed, coughing up blood. "What's wrong? Are you okay?"
Dad.
He rushed to Ted's side, calling out to him hoarsely, but got no response. After I called an ambulance in a hurry, Ted was rushed to the hospital, and we followed in a taxi. Thanks to the prompt action at the hospital, Ted was diagnosed as not being in a life-threatening condition and was expected to be discharged in a few days. Still, Ted needed to take ample rest for a while, so I quickly went home to prepare items for his hospital stay and informed Daniel about the situation. The doctor said it was due to the change of seasons, but I want you to take it easy from now on. I held Ted's hand gently, feeling a warmth in my eyes as I pleaded.
Understood, thank you. I'll take better care of myself from now on. If Dad is determined, I'm sure he'll recover quickly.
Relieved by Ted's firm response, we prepared to return home, feeling the bonds of our family anew. On a day when Ted's recovery was becoming evident, we were chatting cheerfully in his hospital room when Daniel and Sophie came to visit. "Dad, you've been through a lot. How are you feeling?"
I'm glad you guys came. It's made me feel a lot better. It's a relief to see Dad looking so well.
Amidst the pleasant conversation, Sophie was unusually quiet, observing the scene.
Sophie, aren't you going to say hi to Grandpa? You need to greet him properly.
Normally, Sophie would light up with a bright smile at the sight of us, but today, even with Daniel's prompt, she remained tense and unable to relax. Realizing she was overwhelmed by the unfamiliar atmosphere of the hospital room, I gently encouraged her. "Sophie, the dress you're wearing today is very charming." The dress she wore was a special Christmas gift from us.
Thank you.
Being complimented on her dress made her spirits lift a bit, bringing a smile back to her face. Then, with a small smile, she slowly walked towards Ted and took out an item from a little bag she was carrying.
Grandpa, please get well soon.
Realizing it was 1,000 origami cranes, Ted initially looked surprised as he received it, but as he carefully examined them, he seemed to grasp some deeper meaning and suddenly tore them apart. "What are you doing?" Sophie put her heart into making those, treasure them. Yet, Ted's eyes harbored a cold light.
Do you not understand the true meaning behind this?
"What? What do you mean?" Urged by Ted, I picked up the torn crane too. Upon closer inspection, I found a message inside the beautifully folded cranes, expressing a wish to go shopping together when his health is regained. Could it be?
Exactly. Sophie did not make this 1,000 origami cranes.
From that moment, the warm atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically, enveloped in a heavy and cold air. I stood there, gazing at the message, my mind drifting back to an event that had occurred just a few days ago. It was a day reported by the media to be exceptionally cold, making it a very chilly day. I received a call from Daniel as usual.
I'm really sorry, but Sophie has come down with a high fever, and both Grace and I are swamped with work at the office, unable to go back right away.
No need to worry about that. I'll go pick her up from daycare right away. Sophie, having fallen ill with a severe cold, ended up spending her recovery period at our house, mostly bedridden and unable to move much for a while. I pray every day for Sophie to get well soon. While taking care of Sophie, I hoped for her speedy recovery and spent my free time folding 1,000 origami cranes carefully for her. Thankfully, under our loving care, Sophie gradually began to regain her health.
Grandma.
Oh, Sophie. It's so good to see you're able to talk again. Sophie, gaining back her strength, seemed to notice the 1,000 origami cranes I had folded.
What's that?
These are called 1,000 origami cranes. I folded them for you hoping you'll recover as quickly as possible.
Really? I'm not good at origami.
Don't worry, Sophie. When you get better, we'll practice together, okay?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Grandma.
Indeed, Sophie and I had such a conversation. Not much time has passed since then, and it was only recently that Sophie's fever subsided, and she became active again. She had rapidly improved her origami skills during that time, but the quality of the 1,000 origami cranes she folded were significantly superior to those I had folded. And the handwriting message attached also seemed to be Sophie's at first glance, but it was slightly different from the secret letters she would send me.
Sophie, I'm not angry, but can you tell me who prepared this?
When Ted asked Sophie, she just silently tightened her lips and shook her head, not providing any answer.
Sophie.
With no reply from Sophie, his face showed a mixture of frustration and resignation as he let out a sigh and turned his gaze towards Daniel.
Daniel, I've kept all the receipts for the gifts given to Sophie at our house. Huh, what's up all of a sudden? What about it?
Daniel was clearly perplexed, unable to hide his bewildered expression at Ted's question.
When you get home, take a look at those receipts. If you find nothing, then next, we'll check the security camera footage. What do you mean?
We had been feeling some kind of discomfort with Sophie's behavior over the past few months. She used to be curious about everything and was enthusiastic about activities in the park, but we had noticed her liveliness gradually fading and changing. Especially, her reaction when we tried to take her to the park on a clear sunny day was quite surprising to us.
Grandpa, I don't want to go to the park anymore, it's boring.
It was unprecedented that Sophie expresses disinterest in park activities, which surprised us greatly.
What's the matter, Sophie? Are you feeling unwell?
No, not really. I just want a new toy.
What about the playset we bought for you recently?
That's not fun anymore.
It was so unusual Sophie expresses dissatisfaction and wisdom like this, that lead us to ponder deeply whether there was a significant reason behind it.
I see, maybe Sophie is growing up and her interests in toys are changing.
Ted, internally delighted at Sophie's first act of whimsy, had complied with her demands and acquired new toys for her. However, following that incident, Sophie gradually began making more demands and frequently voiced her dissatisfaction.
Grandpa, I've already finished all the levels of the new game you bought.
What? Really? I'm surprised. It hasn't been so long since we got it.
Is it okay for her to be playing games so much? We usually refrain from interfering with Daniel and Grace's parenting, but this time we couldn't help but harbor some doubts about Sophie's behavior.
So, did you enjoy that game?
Yeah, well,
Then, it might be a good idea to pick something else Sophie wants next time.
Aligning with Sophie's wishes, Ted once again decided to purchase a new game she desired. However, the games Sophie chose often were not suitable for her age or were limited edition with very high prices, posing problems.
What did you think of the game we bought before?
She remained silent and shook her head.
Is something wrong? Do you have any concerns? You seem different, Sophie.
actually, I've been thinking I'd like a different game next.
Again?
Faced with another request from Sophie, he couldn't hide his mixed feelings of surprise and complexity.
Don't you have any comments about the previous game? Can you share even just a word?
Sophie barely spoke, merely nodding slightly, her expression remained closed off.
If you can't talk about it, it might be difficult to buy you a new game.
It was fun.
Perhaps, feeling a sudden rush of panic, Sophie hastily corrected her statement, trying to improve the situation, but he could only sigh deeply at her attitude.
Can you promise not to spend too much time on games, like you promised Grandpa?
Yes, I'll keep my promise to Grandpa.
Along with the new game he gave to Sarah, he felt some uneasiness in her behavior pattern and had carefully kept all the receipts of the purchases. Sophie, not only for games but also continuously demanded various new toys and clothes. However, hardly any response or words of gratitude re-said. On the other hand, Ted wished for her healthy growth without spoiling her, and decided to reduce the frequency of giving her what she wants. Later, when I handed a bundle of receipts to Daniel, we faced an unexpected turn of events.
Dad, Mom, all these items, I've never seen anything like them before. I thought so. But that's not all.
Sophie, not only for games but also continuously demanded various new toys and clothes. However, hardly any response or words of gratitude were said.
Sophie, let's go outside and play with Uncle.
Responding to their confusion, Nathan immediately acted and led Sophie to a different space. In that moment, Daniel took out his smartphone and showed us the shocking footage captured on the security camera.
It's okay, Sophie. Try to sweet talk to Grandpa for even nicer things. Yes.
How could this happen?
Ted could not hide his deep shock and disappointment, but the footage suggested there was more to the story.
You can't possibly enjoy all these gifts by only yourself, can you? These are special things I received for my birthday, but...
Just listen. What's yours is mine. I won't allow you to be the only one who benefits.
The footage showed Grace taking away everything given to Sophie and scolding her loudly without hesitation.
Since I'm taking care of you, you should at least show some gratitude.
This was followed by a scene where Grace forcefully took clothes that Sophie was holding.
I didn't get anything new today.
What?
I can't have any fun because of you. I'm sorry. You'll get no dinner tonight.
Grace left without a second glance at the crying Sophie. The footage continued, but it was so heart-wrenching that watching it anymore was unbearable. How can someone do such terrible things to their own daughter?
I can't believe such terrible things were happening while I was away at work. I completely failed in my role as a father.
He trembled with the realization of his helplessness and anger at himself for not being able to change the situation.
There might be more hidden truths we don't know about. Right. I'll hire a detective to investigate.
He decided to hire a detective for further investigation. From the investigation, it revealed not only Grace's affair, but also uncover the shocking truth that she had been selling the gifts Sophie received from us and spending the money with her lover.
I really need to have a serious talk with her. I want Nathan to take care of Sophie for a while and want both my dad and mom to be with us.
Daniel appeared in front of us, with his resolve firm. Seeing his determination, Nathan responded with a serious expression.
Leave Sophie to me. Of course. We have a lot to tell Grace as well. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
A few days later, Daniel entrusted Sophie to Nathan and brought Grace to our house.
I have work tomorrow, so please make it brief,
she said in a slightly imperious tone, but Daniel got straight to the point.
Grace, you're hiding something, aren't you?
What are you talking about?
The fact that you're having an affair, everyone knows already.
Why would you say that? When did I ever have an affair?
She looked back at Daniel with defiant eyes, refusing to admit anything. Daniel showed Grace with photos and surveillance footage collected by a detective.
Here's the clear evidence against you.
This is...
Faced with the evidence, she couldn't hide her slight disturbance.
Such evidence could be fabricated with today's technology.
Being backed into a tight corner, she continued to make desperate excuses.
I don't have the time to fabricate such a vast amount of evidence. Isn't it about time you accepted the truth?
The pile of evidence was so large that couldn't fit on the table, and faced with all of it, she had no choice but to admit it.
I've always thought that marrying the eldest son of a major construction company would allow me to lead a more luxurious life.
And so, she finally opened up about her feelings.
But it was decided that Nathan would take over.
I told you at first that I wouldn't be involved in the construction industry. So, please stop having such selfish expectations.
Besides, it's unacceptable that I can't live in the prime location of your family's home because of Nathan.
It seemed Grace had misunderstood that she would naturally join Ted's family after marrying Daniel, because Nathan was abroad when they were dating.
I had set my sights on it.
Grace's complaint surprised us all.
My father, mother, and Nathan have all been fully supportive of my dreams. Moving out and becoming independent was thanks to their support.
Your earnings alone are not enough for our lifestyle.
Grace confronted Daniel angrily.
Seeing Sophie always getting a lot of allowance and toys made me feel jealous and inferior.
She embezzled Sophie's allowance and even sold her toys to have fun with a younger lover.
I thought I could lead an easier life, but I never imagined it would be this hard.
She blamed Daniel as if he was the root cause of all her problems.
You're living too lavishly. If we were a bit more frugal, we could live comfortably.
I dreamed of a wedding in Guam, but I can't accept that it ended up being so plain.
When her financial expectations of Daniel became clear, Ted grimaced and held his head in dismay.
I reached my limit. The gifts for Sophie were reduced, and I've been enduring days of frustration.
I'm not foolish enough to buy things recklessly just for Sophie's smile. It was clear to me that you were spending it on luxuries for yourself.
In response to her selfish actions, Ted was barely holding back his anger, enduring his feelings of rage.
I had no choice but to try and please your father by pretending as if Sophie made 1,000 origami cranes, but it backfired.
Enough is enough. How dare you use my father as your own personal ATM?
Daniel's anger reached its peak, and he stood up to yell at her.
Your selfish behavior, always getting your way, is unacceptable.
His criticism toward Grace contained a level of indignation he seldom showed, and she was clearly frightened.
I've reached my limit. This is the end, we're getting a divorce.
As he vented his fierce anger towards Grace, the atmosphere changed dramatically, prompting me to intervene immediately to resolve the situation. What Grace did can never be excused.
Exactly.
While urging Daniel to calm down, I continued the conversation calmly. But even if your relationship with Daniel and us ends, Grace, you still have a responsibility as Sophie's mother. You mustn't forget the weight of that. Speaking to her, I conveyed a message of compassion mixed with sternness. Think back on the pure heart of Sophie, who, despite bearing the sadness of being scolded by her mother or having precious things taken away, never mentioned your name. Daniel's harsh rebuke seemed to bring some realization to her, who silently focused on my words and listened sincerely. Try to understand your daughter's feelings a bit more deeply.
Yes, I understand.
Sophie must have been quietly observing her mother's daily preoccupation. Despite receiving harsh words from Grace, Sophie endured them, likely because of a strong desire to be recognized by her mother. Hoping Grace would fully grasp her daughter's deep emotions, I decided to go further into the conversation. Also, Grace. And to Daniel as well, there's something important I want to say.
Yes, what is it?
About this incident of the 1,000 origami cranes and the handwritten message, it was clear from the beginning that Sophie had no direct involvement.
It's hard to tell just by shown.
Saying so, he scratched his head apologetically. Actually, we've been receiving heartwarming letters from Sophie on numerous occasions. Revealing this, I displayed a collection of letters Sophie had sent us on the table.
Someday, when I grow up, I'm going to be Grandpa's bride.
Letters filled with such innocent dreams caught my eye.
I want to ride a balloon and play freely in the high sky.
These letters conveyed a deep sense of loneliness due to the prolonged absence of her parents.
Sophie, I'm so sorry for making you go through such tough times. I was so caught up in work that I can't notice your important feelings.
I deeply regret my actions as well.
I'm sorry. After expressing their profound remorse as if Sophie was present, I deeply hoped for their rehabilitation. After the conversation ended, Grace's demeanor shifted from the arrival, becoming quiet and subdued as she left. Weeks later, the divorce proceedings were completed, and their relationship was legally dissolved, but they decided not to pursue educational expenses from Grace, with setting the condition that she become a better mother for Sophie.
Grace was dissatisfied with my salary, but it seems like she's found a new job opportunity.
A month after the divorce, I was informed of such news from Daniel. Having quit her job because of the divorce, Grace, who hadn't been working properly while married, seemed to face a challenging path to reemployment.
All I wanted for her was to understand the realities of working life. I'd be just content with her getting job.
Hearing him speak, I couldn't help but feel his growth internally.
I want to spend more time with Sophie and increase our conversations.
It's going to be more challenging than ever, so why not move closer to us without hesitation?
I'll gratefully accept that offer.
With that resolution, Daniel acted swiftly, establishing a new base for his life near our house, and carried out the moving. After a while starting his new life, a letter from Grace arrived at our house.
Fitting into the new workplace has been more challenging than expected, and it's been a series of challenges every day. However, I'm determined not to run away from these difficulties to become closer to the ideal mother for Sophie.
Hearing about the trials she's facing makes me worried.
But these are the experiences she needs to grow as a business person.
The words of encouragement sent by Ted clearly contained support and expectations for her improvement.
As soon as we're financially stable, I will choose a toy that Sophie will truly enjoy.
Through this letter, Grace's determination towards her new life reflected a strong resolve for the new path she is embarking on. We supported her new challenge, and my husband deeply resonated with this sentiment. After the moving, Sophie began visiting our house more frequently, increasing the opportunities to deepen our family bonds. The life of Daniel and Sophie seemed to be fulfilling, but her occasional lonely demeanor became a deep concern for me. I think any child would feel a deep loneliness from suddenly not having their mother around. While watching Sophie enjoy playing with Ted and Nathan with a tender gaze, I shared my concerns with Daniel.
Every time I hear Sophie says a mom in her sleep, I'm overwhelmed by guilt for causing her pain.
Don't worry. We'll continue to be there for her, offering her the support she needs, so don't hesitate talking to us anything, no matter how small. To overcome this difficult period, I was more motivated than ever, continuing to offer words of encouragement to Daniel.
Mom, I'm always grateful. Please stay healthy forever. Thank you.
Hoping from the bottom of my heart for Grace to renew herself and for Sophie to have a peaceful reunion with her mother one day, I quietly cherished this wish.